Wow, to honor the life of Paul Smith. It's hard to honor the life of such a profound person in just a few words. For me, Paul was a friend, a mentor, helped me begin my life's work and found my organization. Um, he was a lifeline and an inspiration. His book opened me up into a new world and becoming in Christianity. But if I were to just distill it into maybe one thing that Paul was to me, he was an affirmation. Both in who he was a walking affirmation of the importance and the power of the spiritual journey, what can be, where God can take us, what can open up in our lives, what we can heal from, and what life can be like following the Spirit's call. He was also a personal affirmation to me as he was so gifted, so and powerfully and immensely gifted in affirming who I was, who you are, as I know others are listening to this have probably had similar experiences, to affirm us in our gifts, to affirm us in our work. He was on a board with me for many years, and every single meeting ended with this just overflow of affirmations for me and others working in the organization, which is so profound and beautiful. Paul birthed life in my life, in my journey, and in my work. I will forever miss Paul, but I know he's very, very, very close and still in ways beyond my understanding and even knowing, breathing life into me today and affirming my gifts and my work and the work of ICN and all the different things he's helped manifest and breathe life to in from his personhood and his spiritual journey. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about Paul.
Well, I first met Paul Smith through his book, Integral Christianity. I read it when I was out camping one summer. And at the time, I was impressed by his progressive and integrated approach to the Christian faith that I saw in that writing. And so when I joined ICN in 2019, I saw Paul on these little Zoom squares. And he welcomed newcomers to the communities through the Sunday gathering and through the WeSpace group. And then from that time, and then until his death, I really appreciated, I guess what I would call Paul's intellectual prowess and his breadth of knowledge. He had fine scholastic and research abilities. And he emphasized incarnational theology in the physical body, which was a little different than I was used to. And he had this tremendous knowledge of the Hebrew and Christian scriptures and an ability to interpret those scriptures through the lens of Jesus as a wisdom teacher and as a mystic. And through Paul, I was introduced to spiritual guides and to prayer language, neither of which were part of my liberal Protestant upbringing with which I was familiar. So in 2023, I was fortunate to meet Paul in Kansas City and get to know him in the flesh, in this form, so to speak. And he is, and he'll continue to be missed. So I'm grateful for his vision and for his meeting Luke, and that led to the creation of ICN and this tremendous legacy he's passed to us. And I trust that he'll continue to be part of our ICN community from the imaginal realm. So I'm grateful.
I'd love to say a few things about Paul Smith and the impression he made upon me. Initially, I was introduced to his work and ideas through the Integral Christianity book that he wrote, and it arrived for me in a perfect time when I was starting to feel dissatisfied or uncomfortable in traditional Christianity, but some of the Eastern philosophies that I'd experimented with weren't fulfilling that longing for a intimate or personal relationship with the divine. And so Paul's book seemed to answer my yearning and longing, and I'm ever so grateful to him for that. A bit later, I was introduced to the Integral Christian Network through Luke and Paul, and was on the board initially. And I got to know Paul a little bit firsthand. I even was in Kansas City and got to meet him in person, and immediately was struck by his warmth and sincerity and authenticity and his loving, I think. I always felt accepted and just embraced by his warmth and his depth and wisdom would come through as well. So it wasn't just a soft and mushy kind of loving that he exuded. It was a deep and true loving. And I remember he reached out to me one time when I mentioned I was going through a bit of a rough period, and really welcomed a personal conversation. I was so touched by his attentiveness to the people around him. So I remember that as a very precious time I had with Paul. And I think the most lasting impression that I received through Paul and his work was his devotional and close and real relationship with Jesus. I'd had an experience, or a few, I think, earlier in life with a sense of closeness with Jesus, but I hadn't really given it a lot of consideration until I heard Paul describing his encounters, truly intimate and personal relationship that he developed with Jesus. And it was through hearing him and listening to him that I wanted to explore that kind of closeness as well. So just inspired by him, and also through the work and practice at Integral Christian Network, I found a way to have my own close encounters and relationship with Jesus. And that really is a gift, a lasting gift that I received from Paul, and ever grateful to him for that and all he left, and maybe even continues to nurture here with us still in these incarnated bodies. Anyway, I love you, Paul.
Hello, I'm Marian Sassetti, and I'm absolutely delighted and honored to talk about Paul. My first experience with Paul was when he joined our WeSpace group and saw my beloved sister on my left shoulder, which was so reassuring. And ever since then, he had been a point of light, acceptance, and love for me. During COVID, I felt like I would just sit in the lap of ICN and absorb all the love, all the messages, all the spectacularly beautiful writing that Paul and Luke had both produced for us. But I know the original idea came from Paul. I had joked with him once that I felt so secure that as a cancer survivor, when I would drive to my mammogram appointments, I'd bring Paul along with me. It just gave me this great sense of Jesus, the divine mother, all embodied in him, being on my journey to find out whatever it was I was going to find out, and I was going to be able to accept it. So with great love, fondness, profound gratitude, thank you, Paul, for being who you were, for being chosen to be the leader you've been and still are on the other side. Love you very much.
My name is Petra. I'm a Lutheran minister. I'm working in hospital chaplaincy and as a coach, teaching resilience tools. And I live in northern Germany near Hamburg. I decided to speak this without Google Translate, so you will excuse mistakes with my English, but I want to be authentic and not perfect. My first contact with Paul and his book, Is Your God Big Enough, Close Enough, You Enough, was in a German blog article about it. I found a link to Paul's website, and there I listened to a lecture about his book. I didn't understand English very good, but it was his laughing, his warm voice, and his expression, transmission maybe, what first touched my heart. He often used the word embrace, and I actually felt embraced. At that time, in January 2019, I was in a deep personal spiritual crisis. I was diagnosed with burnout, depression, in psychological treatment, and not working for months. My old Christian dogmatic worldview shattered completely at this time. I felt lost and had no idea how my path with Christianity and my profession as a minister will go on. I knew Wilber's integral map of consciousness since, I guess, 2015, but there was no real bridge to my spirituality because Wilber is a Buddhist. And then Paul's new version to explain the Trinity and the Bible through an integral lens. I was highly fascinated. I discovered with this new, wider, mystical version of Christianity the bridge I needed to recover. I repeated listening to his lecture at different times, stopping again and translating again. Supported by the animated pictures there. That was it, was I looked for. That was the crucial step that helped me to find my path again. And in summer 2019, I started to work again, left the old congregation, moved to a new city, and found a new mission in spiritual care. During the Corona crisis, the German Integral Christian Network was founded, and there I found other integral German Christians. And then I found ICN, started to study English again, read the articles of Paul and Luke in English, listened to ICN meditations, and started to participate in Sunday gatherings. I've never communicated directly very much with Paul, but when I met him in breakout groups or listened to his words, it was the same. He touched my heart like a healing transmission, embracing me with words. I discovered a deep new way to meditate with VMP practices. I deepened a lot since then, and I found in ICN a new community with all of you, a new mystical home base. That's my brief history with Paul.
I first came across Paul through his wonderful book, Integral Christianity, and then through various connections with ICN. And the thing I think about him is that he got me spiritually. He kind of recognized who I am in a way that others hadn't. And in making that recognition, he enabled me to grow and develop into that spiritual being, into that being that I could be. And also, in his wonderful, loving and humorous way, he challenged me to be that person, to stop pretending that I was less than I was, and to come out into it. And I hear his little voice in my mind, that humorous, loving voice. Go on, Pete. Come on, Pete. You can do it. You can do it. Wake up, wake up, wake up, Pete. Thanks, Paul. You're still there, and I love your presence.
Dear Paul, I want to thank you, especially for two things. First, when I was reading Ken Wilber, I was doing the translation, the connection between what he was writing about and what I was experiencing in my own spiritual life and also in my wrestling with my Christian community. I was making this connection myself. But then I read your book and your other writings, and it became clear that what I was trying to accomplish here, the direction I was looking, that this is not just fantasy, but this is a direction that is worthwhile pursuing, and that you showed that it was possible. And so this really gave me a lot of confidence and some kind of rest in my heart that this is not just fantasy. The second thing is that as I contacted you and others also from the German-speaking space, we were a bunch of people who were not connected. And it needed you and Luke to connect us, to bring us together. And this cell of German-speaking people has now emerged to a special platform, a self-organizing platform around integral Christian belief, which is really, if you want, your fault. And I'm very grateful for that, and many other people are too. So thanks a lot, dear Paul, for all you did and who you were. The funny thing is that normally we are grateful for what people do. And of course, I also started with what you did. Can one be grateful for what a person is, what they emanate? And maybe this was and is the most relevant gift you gave to the world, and I assume still give. It feels as you are still here and you're still emanating. Thank you so much, Paul.
It's been said that religion is more like falling in love with someone than it is trying to prove something is true. And in the last month, I feel as though I've begun to fall in love with Paul Smith. I joined ICN about 3 months ago, which was about 4 or 5 months after Paul's passing. And for the first several months, I didn't have any sense of who Paul was. And then about a month ago, I started looking at some video clips of him where he's talking about establishing a life-transforming friendship with Jesus. By the way, those video clips are available on the ICN website on the Legacy page at the very bottom. When I watched these clips, I suddenly had a sense of who Paul has been. His kindness, his playful vulnerability, his very authentic humility. These are qualities that can't be manufactured. They're just who he is. So now I'm finding myself still struggling with establishing a transforming relationship with Jesus, but I'm having no difficulty falling in love with the life-transforming friendship that I'm beginning to have with Paul.
Well, what can I say about Paul? Here now, a year after his passing. Paul was such a gift in my life. He is still. When I met Paul years ago, and I've told this story a lot, it was just what strikes me now was how much of a gift that was. Just such a serendipitous, profound gift. He had a presence that many have experienced and spoke of, and through that connection, so much has come about through ICN, but also in my life that is really quite unfathomable. The spiritual growth and unfolding that's taken part in me because of Paul is more than I can name. I know there's ways that that's happened that I can hardly even identify, but Paul was such a singular presence and person, and he brought so much into my life and into the lives of so many. I'm so grateful for the years I had with him and for all the wonderful things that he gave in his teachings and his ideas and his learning and his spirit and energy. How much that was a gift, just being with him every week, sharing his presence and friendship and passionate energy that went between us, and we moved in that together in such profound ways. And I miss him a lot, and he's also still here. It's been such an experience of really knowing, not just knowing, but participating in the reality of death not being the end. And it's continued this year in ways that have been surprising and illuminating and challenging and wonderful. He's brought things to me. He's often present in a playfulness in a way that he was in life, but also with a greater freedom and fuller joy and exploration. It's such a gift to still have him as a guide. And when I met Paul, he was 45 years older than me, and I didn't know how long he would be in my life, and always kind of knew that it wouldn't be forever. But I was wrong about that. It is forever. Paul will always be with me. He'll always be with the ICN community, and he is leading us into what it means to have a founding ancestor. I know that he's continuing to create and serve and help us from the other side in such beautiful, mystical, mysterious, profound, and present ways that we can tangibly feel and experience. So I'm so grateful to Paul for all of that, for his presence in my life, and I honor him with the depth of my heart and being, as I will into the future. So thank you so much, Paul, for everything.